what's in your hand? And what I really mean is what skills, what talents, what giftings, what resources do you actually have available right now that if you could use, if you would steward, it would actually change your life, change others' lives, and really change the world around you. And what I've realized in my life is so often we want what's in someone else's hand. We want someone else's resources. We want someone else's revelation. We want someone else's relationships. We want someone else's social following. We want someone else's height or someone else's good look. And we actually begin to disqualify ourselves from the very thing God's called us and qualified us to do by simply saying we don't have that in our hands yet to actually facilitate what God's asking me to do. But what I've realized is that you don't know how valuable what you have in your hand is until you start using it for God's will. When I look throughout Scripture, some of the heroes in history had just a small thing in their hand that they used for God. Think about it. Moses, who was a stutterer, who was an outcast, who was a runaway, who was a murderer, based on the biblical description of his journey, Moses simply had a staff. But he leveraged that staff, which literally led millions of people to freedom. If you look at David, David was just a shepherd boy who had a sling, but he used that sling to conquer a giant, a circus freak, and to set God's people free. When you look about Rahab, who was a prostitute, who just had an extra room in the wall of Jericho, and now she's recorded in the ancient scriptures simply because she used what was available to her. If you look throughout the Old Testament, the widow of Zarephath simply had a little bit of oil and a little bit of flour, but she used what was in her hands and it provided supernatural provision for her, her sons, for the prophets. If you think about that boy in the New Testament who had a filet-o-fish Happy Meal, think about it. He had a filet-o-fish Happy Meal that God multiplied to feed thousands and thousands of people. Listen, don't disqualify the thing that God has qualified you with, which is literally what's in your hand. Don't worry about what's not in your hand. I want to encourage you right now. Just start using what God has given you and watch him do the impossible and the unprecedented with it.